Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to IVMF's VetNet webinars. And I hope all is well with you and your families. Today, we are happy to partner up with Travelers to bring you a VetNet webinar on preparing for your next career. So today, we're going to have very interactive webinar around resumes and interview prep questions, right? So that being said, my name is Elvis Avdic. As you know, I'm a part of IVMF alumni department here at Syracuse University, and I work along with the Ashley Cavender, who is our alumni manager, and we always try to bring you guys these VetNet webinars to help you with your career journeys or entrepreneurship journeys as you move forward in life. And also, just some ground rules before we get started. If you're not speaking, please make sure that you're muted so that way we have clear audio throughout the sessions because we are recording this session. And if you have any questions for our guest speakers, you would like to ask a question, please make sure you raise your hand or type in the chat box. That being said, I would like to not spend any more time talking and just pass it on to our guests from Travelers to introduce themselves and get the webinar on the road. Jim and Vicky, welcome.
Excellent. Pleasure to be here. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jim McMahon with Travelers, and I'm being joined by a couple of colleagues today. We've got some slides. We'll just start talking, and then Elvis, we'll let you know when we want to kick in some of the slides, and we'll catch up on that. But I coordinate military and veteran outreach for Travelers. I'm based in Hartford, Connecticut. Had the pleasure on a number of occasions to present various forms of what we're about to do in the next hour to O2O contingents at Fort Drum and Fort Bragg, and my colleague Vicky is kind of the primary person for Fort Campbell, and we've tag teamed and added a person to it. But what we're going to do is we've got an outline for the next hour. We do have some things we want to talk about. First 10 or 15 minutes is going to be a little bit of a background on Travelers, who we are, to broaden some of your perspectives on things. And then we're going to transition over to just talking about how to search for a job, resumes, interviews, career management, things of that nature. We're going to try a couple of volunteers that Elvis and Laura have, I think, managed to convince or coerce to answer a couple of questions for us. But again, we're producing this live for the next hour or so. If you have a question on a subject, again, raise hand, throw it in the chat. We'll address some things. Vicky, if I could ask you to introduce yourself, your military connection, and then I know Joe has joined us. We'll get Joe's introduction, and then we'll talk a little bit more about who we are and how we're going to approach this. Vicky.
Yes, hi everyone. So I'm Vicky Egley. I'm a regional director over the Claim Account Executives, and I've been with Travelers 20 years. I live in the Bachelorette capital, Nashville, Tennessee. Clearly my accent is not from the South. I'm originally from Great Britain. I was born in London, grew up in Nottingham. And for those that ask, yes, there was a Robin Hood. I majored in German in college and moved to Germany to work for the US Army as a German translator. There I met my husband. He was in the Army, MP, and we were married for 20 years. I came to the States, and yeah, I'll share the rest of that a little bit later.
All right, excellent. Joe, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Can
you hear me?
Yeah, can you do a quick introduction?
Yeah, so Joe Stanford III. Currently right now I'm a business information security officer at Travelers. So what I do is I handle cybersecurity for our business segment. Just making sure that all of our assets are secure. Also, I'm also a 20-year plus military member, about 10 years full-time on active duty, and about 10 years in the Air Force National Guard. So, definitely very close. And I'll say at Travelers, outside of cybersecurity, I've had a variety of jobs, maybe about 7 or 8. So definitely have some interesting story to tell you all a little bit later on.
Excellent. So, Vicky is on, I think, her 7th job. Joe is on his 7th or 8th and still counting. So what we want to talk about is, how do you get these jobs? How do you get a job initially? And then from a career management perspective, how do you continue to move and progress? So, but who is Travelers? So, moving on to the next slide, quick introduction on who we are. So yes, we're an insurance company, but I always pause anytime I've got any kind of a military related audience and say, yes, we're insurance, but no, we don't want you to sell anything. And we're not here openly recruiting today. We're talking about the possibilities and to assist you. But what we would say is, don't stereotype, don't pigeonhole. So insurance doesn't necessarily mean sales. Amazon doesn't mean just the person driving the van, dropping things off. Walmart isn't welcome to Walmart. The analogy I use sometimes, if you're associated with the Navy, an aircraft carrier has about 5,500 personnel, yet only about 120 to 150 people on an aircraft carrier are actually pilots. So the basic nature of an aircraft carrier is a floating airport, yet less than 3% of the personnel actually have the job that it's created for. So at Travelers, we would say that like only 1 to 2% of our people are actually involved in direct sales. I don't know what the percentages are of Amazon drivers and Walmart greeters and things of that nature. But the first thing from an advice perspective we would give everyone is, think more broadly. Don't eliminate because you think you know what the answer is going to be. But we're the 2nd largest commercial property and casualty insurer in the country. We have a personal insurance business, homeowners, auto, things that we would all buy. Commercial insurance is really our primary, insuring everything from small mom and pop shops through some of the largest multinationals around the world. About 30,000 employees, and we know about 1,000 or so have military experience. And the connection is risk. Everyone associated with the military understands risk, trains for it, avoid it, mitigate it. And essentially an insurance company is a risk management company. And it's what I would describe, and I think Joe and Vicky would describe, it's an accidental career. None of us grew up thinking we're going to go work for an insurance company. We kind of all discovered it. And I've been here 15 years, and Vicky 20-ish, Joe I think 13 or so. Again, be open-minded. So Vicky, did you ever imagine you'd work for an insurance company? And how did you get into it? What was your first entree as far as knocking on a door and discovering the company?
Yeah, so I was a military spouse, and I had all intentions of carrying on a career using my language skills. But, our first station was Anniston, Alabama, and there was no demand there. And then, Fort Benning and Indianapolis, Fort Benjamin Harrison, there was no demand for German. So at that point, I had given up, my career, so to speak, but I wanted to earn money. And so I was working as a medical transcriptionist, working from home so I could take care of the kids, but still bring in a paycheck. And I was working for a company that happened to merge with Travelers Insurance. So it was just pure fluke. But one day I was, I was working for a very strong-willed, go-getter head nurse. And the leadership in Travelers saw her talent, and she and I, hit it off. I was working, I think 9 days after I'd had a baby, doing medical transcription. She said, you should come and work for Travelers. Oh, it says our voices are very broken. Is that everybody not hearing us?
I'm hearing you fine.
Okay. It might be your internet. I'm not sure. Anyway, long story short, she encouraged me to come to Travelers. I came in the first day. I had to start somewhere, and I started in the mailroom. And I was literally, the first day, there was not enough desks out on the floor. And so unfortunately, that was, where I started. I got to know everybody and worked my way up. in the civilian world, not everybody wears a uniform. So you meet and greet people, and they could be senior leadership, they could be, just a peer of yours. But quickly people saw, that I was military spouse. I was quick on my feet, quick learner, adaptable, and moved up through the ranks.
Okay, thanks, Vicki. Joe, did you ever envision working for an insurance company?
I can honestly say I did not. So my story is a little different. So was in the military. 10 years active duty. Got stationed in Las Vegas, then stationed in Tokyo, Japan. Decided to get out. Go to school full time. And then, stumbled upon, a bunch of job fairs. So, when you're getting out, you transition in, you're going to job fairs, you're trying to see how your military skills fit in some sort of corporate environment. And I was at a job fair and I was looking for a leadership program. And while I was there, I actually met two people in talent acquisitions, Jim being one of them. Had a great conversation about opportunities to travel, realizing that there were a lot of jobs outside of what Jim said. The stereotype is like selling insurance, and I didn't realize like they had like technology, project management, different jobs that were actually available where I could actually go into. And then I decided to give it a chance and go there versus going into maybe a government job. And the rest is history. And it's actually been I would say pretty good. And I've actually even deployed once currently in my current role from Travelers. And I've honestly been supported 100%. Went to deployment, came back, and felt like I didn't miss a beat when I was getting reintegrated. It's almost like deploying and coming back home to your home station.
All right, excellent. So a couple of themes. Find mentors, find friends, be adaptable. So Elvis, can we get back to the slides, or we're going to go to number 4? We're not. All right, so let's just we produce this live. We keep talking. So you're sitting there, and again, don't stereotype different opportunities. An insurance company. If you were banging dents out of a Humvee, we would make you an auto adjuster. If you were Army engineering or Navy Seabees, we might make you a property adjuster. The folks that come and survey damage. We have former criminal investigators that are fraud investigators. We have nurses or corpsmen that are associated with our workers' comp book of business and medical case managers. We have lots of technology related positions. Joe, you actually went through the technology development program, I believe, didn't you? I mean, how many IT people do we have in Travelers? There's just way too many of you guys.
Yeah, upwards of 3,000. So it's definitely a lot of different jobs there. And I would agree. I did go through a leadership program, which was phenomenal. This was Travelers is actually my first civilian job since joining the military.
Elvis, can you get our slides back, or are you having some technical difficulties? Perfect. Stay right there. I'm seeing a really large slide, not the whole slide, but again, we'll just we'll roll with this. So a couple of things I'm going to point out. If there's individuals that are looking for remote opportunities, if you go to travelers.com and if you click on nationwide opportunities, that's essentially anything remote. If you're a military spouse and you're looking for work from home opportunities, we've got them as well. We actually just opened up a position that's based out of Centennial, Colorado, suburb of Denver, for 15 positions. Again, it's work from home. It's staying, from home. That's the one. Stay right there. Perfect. Again, being very flexible is what we're going to suggest. The other thing, if you go to the next slide, as you're evaluating companies, what do they stand for? And so some of the things we've got here, we're military friendly. We support Team Rubicon, which is a veteran disaster organization. We're very much involved in our communities. The bottom photo is Toys for Tots. Holiday time pre-COVID, most of our offices would be involved. Upper photo is just a supply drive that we will go out to forward operating divisions. Joe mentioned he was deployed. When we have some of our employees deployed, we kind of adopt them, we adopt their family, and we want to make sure that the continuity is there. So again, as you're evaluating employers, it's not just the job. It's, we spend so much time at work evaluating, interacting with people. So what we would encourage you to make sure that your values kind of mirror the values of the company that you're at. So Vicky, any thoughts on culture and connection to the community and things of that nature? And then we're going to transition over to, a little bit more on the job searching and career searching, but I'll give you and then Joe some opportunity to just kind of fill in, any thoughts you have on the cultural aspects of evaluating an employer.
Yeah, it's huge. So I left a part of my story out. I lost my husband 10 years ago on active duty, and it was a huge void for me, huge loss of not only my husband's life, but just our family, our military family. They were my extended family. And so there was a huge void. And just about that time at Travelers, we already had like 6 other diversity networks, African American, Hispanic. They created the Military Veterans Diversity Network, and it was a game changer for me. I was brought into it, vetted, and I was always very active in the community, but it gave me such an outlet. I was invited onto the leadership team and met, executive leaders that I learned from. It helped me develop, it helped my career. And I made a lot of friends, learned so much from them. So I can't emphasize that enough, because it's not just your everyday job. It's what you do outside in the community and, with the people you work day in and day out.
Excellent. Thank you. Joe, connections to the community, anything you want to add that's important for you or things that you've seen, and
Yeah, so I mean, one is, again, I'll talk about my deployment. One is I feel like when you look at an organization, for those of you that are continue to serve, in the Guard or Reserve component, having organizations that, as when I deployed, I had people checking on me, making sure everything was good at home, and then also when I got back, the reintegration, was really good. It was like, they slowly eased me back into work, into everything, and it was like I didn't miss a beat. I can honestly say I did actually like that, because, again, having an organization that when you deploy, you come back, they take you in. Also with the community involvement, I think is huge, for me, is because, being able to see an organization that's doing things in community, even closer to me, the Veterans Network was huge. Definitely had a lot of opportunities there. I'll even say at our at Travelers Championship, golf tournament, which is huge. The organization, recognized military members in their service, which was excellent. 1 year I was fortunate enough to be selected for it, and it was just a great appreciation. It was a really humbling experience, and just seeing how an organization integrates military individuals in. So, again, our skill sets are different, whether you're in the Air Force or you're in the Navy, you work in a sub, or you're flying, being able to help integrate those skills back into the civilian, where I'll say that I have definitely seen at Travelers or helped out veterans. So one of the great things is, even with working with Jim, when people are coming to look in and coming to interview, they pull other people in the military in to come have conversations, authentic conversations where you can gain perspective, from someone who's actually in and potentially going through what you're going to go through as you're transitioning into the private sector.
Excellent. So transitioning, or if you've transitioned and you're looking to change careers or change areas, about 99% of the population never served in the military. And they have stereotypes of the military. So Elvis, if you go to the next slide, a stereotype, it's a widely held, fixed, oversimplified image. So in the chat box, if folks wouldn't mind, what do you think are some of the military stereotypes? I never served. My dad did. My brother did. Yeah, I'm very much involved in military outreach, but I interact with managers and colleagues in the company all the time, and they have stereotypes. So, what are some of those military stereotypes that you may have to overcome? I'd be curious. Joe, what are some military stereotypes? Before you walked in the door, rigid. We're seeing from David. Thank you. All military, direct, gung ho. Yeah. Joe, what else you got anything to add?
I'm taking a look at the chat and seeing if there's anything I can add here. I see a lot of the typical stereotypes there. Yeah, I feel like everyone's pretty much they hit them all. And I guess one of the other stereotypes is maybe military members won't be able to adapt over to the private sector because we're just so used to the way things were in the military. I think that's a huge stereotype that's definitely not true. But wow. Yeah, hitting it right hand, language. Yep. Yeah. But yeah. I will say one stereotype that is true is the teamwork aspect, right? So the whole aspect of teamwork, that stereotype is a positive one and actually true. So there's good and bad stereotypes.
There's good and bad stereotypes. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And a lot of the things listed, they are absolutely military stereotypes, but they tend to be negative. So leadership, here's a positive.
Yes.
So a couple others. Vicki, what are a few of the positive military perspectives? And in particular, you've got a team. You're responsible for the southeastern part of the U.S. I mean, when you're looking at interviewing, and in particular, if you're talking to someone with a military background, what are some of the positive things you look for?
Well, when you're in the military, you connect much quicker. So you usually don't know a stranger. So I'm looking for somebody that's personable, that I can, get along with. The positive part to me is that you do adapt. You're quick on your feet. You're just able to connect with people, understand. I mean, all the military, they go in, they get a task, they resolve it, they come out. So quick thinkers, adaptable, smart, intelligent. The theory is that as a military spouse, we're uneducated, we're flaky. We can't keep a job down because we're constantly moving. No, we can multitask. We can do it all. We can move a house, sell a house, take care of kids while our husband's already deployed and ahead of us. So, I see the cup half full in that respect.
Love it, the positive aspects. So Elvis, if you go to the next slide, some of the positive things and what we would encourage on your resume, in your interviewing, and really throughout your career management, look at the positive aspects, because there's going to be enough negativity, honestly. People will find reasons to say no. I mean, in a lot of interviews, the whole interview approach is looking for reasons to say no rather than reasons to say yes. And some of these were listed in your chat, and love it, but character and courage and capability and self-confidence and maturity, etc., teamwork, respect, integrity, and there's a lot of others. So we would really encourage everyone to just think of the positives. What is it that you're the most proud of, and start developing storytelling. Develop where you've come from, where you're going, what's important for you. If you go to the next slide, how do you get to where you want to be? And part of it is investing time, and that's the first thing that we're gonna suggest to you. Vicki, when you interview people, I mean, what are some of the things that you look for as far as their knowledge of the company and knowledge of the jobs and things of that nature? Elvis, if you can go to the next slide.
So, everybody can Google these days, and you can Google a company, but I look for the person that's really invested some time and done the research, maybe gone further than Google of the company, gone onto Glassdoor, gone on to LinkedIn, connected with some people that are actually at Travelers, has a little bit of background knowledge further than, you know, what's on the web. I think that's critical. Keep in mind, you're competing against 100 of other people, so you've got to stand out amongst the rest.
Exactly. So invest time. I can't tell you how often I've interviewed people and said, you know, what do you know about my company? And well, your insurance. Okay, that's a pretty shallow answer. I'm not looking for you to, you know, cite chapter and verse, you know, what our sales are and things of that nature, but at least be able to engage in conversation. And, you know, that research and investing time up front may lead to mentors, you know, both formal and informal. You know, LinkedIn, just don't be afraid to connect with people. You know, if you do some searches, you can find branches of the military, you know, Navy, you can find people that served on ships, you can find folks that have the same MOS code that you had, military spouses, you know, it's across the board. And, you know, don't be afraid to reach out, talk to them, ask them some questions, find out a little bit about a company, you know, find your sense of purpose, you know, where you'll be happy. And then the other thing, and we're going to get into this over the next few slides with your resume, and in particular, you know, the interviewing, practice, rehearse. You know, you train in the military so that the first time you see something isn't the first time you see something. You know, if you play sports, or if you're a parent, you know, you've got kids that are in sports or in dance or musical instruments, we all rehearse, we all practice before we would ever get in front of a group of people. But I can't tell you how often I've interviewed folks and they get stumped by some of the easiest questions. So, Joe, any thoughts from your perspective on, you know, that initial job search, and you know, what have you seen in some interviews that are either, you know, wonderful examples or cringeworthy?
I'll say when preparing for an interview, you know, I would say look at the job description, right? Look at the job on multiple sites, see what's required for it. Spend the time, you know, kind of similar to what Vicky said, doing the research. So looking at job description, seeing how your military skill set can align, and making sure you have an example for each and every one of the things you see on the job description. And if you know, especially if it's all military, so just think about, like, you know, if it has an instance of, you know, talking about you have to respond to something fast, you know, for those that have been deployed or those been in stressful situations, you know, how have you been able to react, and, you know, how do you operate under pressure? So but being able to kind of, like, in a sense, you know, communicate in a way that a non-military person. One of the things I always recommend is having someone non-military. So we all have non-military friends or don't work in government, being able to talk to them and being able to give them examples. And if they don't necessarily understand it, that's always like a check, like, oh, maybe I need to talk about it a little bit differently. Also, similar to what they said, LinkedIn, you know, when you go to companies' LinkedIn websites, you know, you'll see members that are served in the military. And, you know, I can honestly tell you, people that have reached out to me, if anyone reaches out to me and they want to say, hey, I see you served, I'm looking at, you know, your company. I don't know a military person that wouldn't respond and help you out in the sense of helping you go through your resume, shorten it down. Because, you know, some people have 6-page resumes, but in corporate, it tends to be 2 pages. You know, stuff like that, just so simplified and helps you out when you get to it. So, you know, I say that's usually the best thing to do when preparing for it. And then last thing what Jim said is, you know, with YouTube and different communication channels, you can watch little clips about an organization outside of just looking at their website to also get a good feel. So just a couple things there.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, and you talked a little bit about resumes, and Elvis, if you go to the next slide, we're not going to spend a lot of time with this one, but, you know, the purpose of a resume, it's to get you an interview, and it's the first impression. It's an example of your writing. It should tell a little bit about your professional life story. Eliminate the jargon in both resumes and in the interview setting. And I know in interviews you're probably gonna slip into some jargon, but if you do, define it, take a step back. You know, I use the example of a sergeant. Anytime I see sergeant on a resume, I'm always wondering what, I mean, that could be a span of control of 6 people, or, you know, command sergeant major could be, you know, hundreds and thousands. So define some things. A couple of other just tips, I guess, are nobody retires. So to me, retirement is like you're off to go play golf or you're off on a permanent vacation. So you're separating from service, you're not retiring. I suggest sometimes a dedicated email address for just employment related things. And then listed here is, the 20-second test. As Joe said, find a civilian, find someone and hand them your resume and just ask them, give them 20 seconds. And what are you pulling off of my resume in 20 seconds? And if I'm not able to tell you the most important things about your background that you're trying to convey, then you probably don't have a really effective resume. I think these slides are going to be posted or shared. So there's a link here on the bottom that has some additional tips. But Vicki, let me ask you, again, you do a lot of interviewing. What works for you or what doesn't work when you first look at a resume?
So errors stand out like a sore thumb to me. It's got to be clear and concise. It's got to be easy to read. It's got to be civilianized, obviously, no acronyms. So proofread your errors for sure. And then keep in mind, I'm looking at hundreds of resumes, so you should really tailor it, have some buzzwords that if you're applying for a risk control job, then it should tailor to some of those buzzwords within your resume. And, your job, say cybersecurity, you describing that job doesn't tell me about you. It tells me about the job itself. And I'm looking at, 100 resumes, all cybersecurity, graduates. I know what they do, but what do you do? So I'm looking for something that stands out. And keep in mind, those resumes, I will handpick and say to our talent acquisition, okay, phone screen these. So it's then the next step is usually a phone screen, unless I'm really impressed with the resume, and then I'm going to call you in.
Thank you. And so, okay, on my resume, I have a civilian equivalent title followed by an actual military title, for example. Thanks, Eric. Yeah, I think that's a great example. I've seen, people say like team lead instead of sergeant and things of that nature. Yeah, if you can translate things and make it easy for me, I find that incredibly helpful. If there's other questions, don't be bashful. Put them in the chat. But resumes lead next to interviews. So Elvis, our next slide, we're just talking a couple of things on interviews. Again, know a little bit about the company. Have some questions prepared. I always, and most interviews will transition at some point in time. Do you have any questions? Do you have any comments? And this is the point where I evaluate the questions you ask me, probably as much, if not more so, as the answers you've given me to the questions. Are you observant? Are you I'm saying observe and look for connections. It's tying some things together. Have questions prepared. I mean, they could be industry wide. What's your competition doing? What do you worry about? From an insurance perspective, if we're in hurricane season and there's a hurricane, how does that impact your company? Things of that nature. But look for those kinds of connections on an interview. Vicki, when we're interviewing people, I don't know, I'm looking for that connection. If you mentioned 100 resumes, the 100 may come down to 10 phone screens. 10 phone screens may come down to 4 qualified people that you're going to interview and your team is going to interview. And to me, it's who do we get along with the best? Everybody at that stage should be qualified for the job. So the intangible is who's going to interact really well. So would you agree that it's really key to just, it's a conversation on an interview. It should be an interrogation.
Right. I'm thinking I've got a team behind me, so I'm looking at you to see if you're a good fit for my team, and we're going to be working closely together. So I'm seeing, your education, I'm looking at everything, but you as a person, are you a good fit to mesh? I can train you and teach you everything else you don't know, but those soft skills. And I just want to add too, on the military spouse side of things, your resume may be sparse, but you can beef it up with all your talents. You are, adaptable, you're quick thinking, you are, super smart. You have, got your education while raising children. Don't be afraid to put all this as filler. Any gaps or anything, just add what your skills are.
Yeah, and the final point we have is just a warm, genuine greeting, first impressions. So, pre-COVID, the way I would describe this is we make first impressions in the first 7 seconds from 7 feet away and the first 7 words that we say to someone. And I think it's the same way, from a Zoom meeting perspective. It's first impressions are so important. Emotional intelligence, I know was mentioned in the chat. Absolutely, emotional intelligence I think is really important to demonstrate. Situational awareness is another thing that I find to really be an intangible that anybody with a military background, everyone is trained at analyzing, making a decision really quickly, and being held accountable for it. And I think that's really an intangible that is extremely important for everyone here. But we are in a little bit of a different perspective. It's COVID. We're doing Zoom meetings. We're doing video meetings. So Elvis, if you go to the next slide, what we've prepared just a couple of tips for this, the video interview world. The link down at the bottom actually has a couple of pages out there and a 4-minute video that some of our talent acquisition folks have put together. It's pretty effective. We're not going to show the video here, but setting the stage, having a tech check, dress the part. Vicky, love the T-shirt that you've got on, with the Travelers branding, right? I mean, you're dressing the part. Engage people, have a backup plan. The backup plan could be as simple as getting a phone call or getting a phone number so that if the connection drops. Joe, we've done so many different video interactions here. I mean, what are you seeing, or what suggestions would you have for folks as far as preparing for a video interview? Anything?
So one is the tech check. So similar to what Jim said, except, if you know it's going to be a Zoom interview and you never use Zoom, I would set up a Zoom account and practice with somebody. Typically people use Zoom, Teams, or Zoom, Teams, and what was the other one I saw? I know Skype, and then also Google Hangout, right? So whatever form of interview, I would try it out with somebody. They have a lot of free versions of things out there. So I would just try it out, because usually you'll get an invite, and in the invite they'll have it. Okay, it's a Zoom invite. Okay, so let me practice using it. Let me make sure I'm good. Also making sure that, wherever you're interviewing, whether you want to have a virtual background or if you want to have that, making sure that's good to go. I think are great things to do if you're preparing for an interview. One other thing that I left out is when you're interviewing, think about like power messaging. So in the military, you deal with things, whether it be multi-million-dollar projects, and make sure you're able to speak very clearly and kind of maybe even towards the beginning about that, the numbers of and amount of dollar value of things that you handle. So include that in your resume. When you're writing there, make sure, you're responsible for $10 million of this, or that'll definitely help out and stand out in a resume when someone's trying to pick through and look at it.
Yeah, so plain background was suggested in the chat. Plain background or some kind of a background. We're working or we're interacting from our bedrooms and dens and kitchen tables and whatever. So yeah, have either a very plain or some kind of a background. And the last bullet here is be prepared to knock the first question out of the park. Yeah. And so Elvis, if you go to the next slide, the most likely first question is, tell me about yourself. And you'll never get a job based on how you answer this question. But I will tell you from absolute experience, you can blow a job by the way you answer this question. I've had people just not prepared. My personal record is 17 minutes. I'm not kidding you. I asked a person, tell me about yourself. This is back in the days when I was wearing a wristwatch, it was pre-iPhone days. And they just kept on going. And I was just glancing down at my, like 8 minutes, 12 minutes, 17 minutes. And then they ended. And so, is that what you were looking for? Yeah, no awareness, no self-awareness is just the best way to do it. So Ace suggested, tell me about yourself. This is more from my point of view, but I grew up in insert state because we all grew up somewhere. Again, that may be the connectivity. I grew up in California or Nevada or Arizona or whatever. I decided to join the service because, again, I'm curious, wanted to serve the country. Wasn't sure what I wanted to be when I grow up, but I'm always interested in why did you decide to join the service? Or if you're a military spouse, talk to me about, just the experiences that you've had. What did you learn in the military? If you're really adept, you'll read the position description, you'll understand what the requirements are, and the things you learned in the military should be directly correlated to the things that are going to be, responsible in the job. And that, that brings me here today to learn more about cybersecurity at Travelers Joe in my conversation with you, or in Vicky's case, claim, and she's the lead for our claim account executives throughout the Southeastern US, but it should be about 30 seconds in length. Vicky, Joe, and anything from that early impressions, tell me about yourself that, again, good or bad, that you'd share with the group.
Yeah, we usually might be in a panel, and that makes it even more stressful. And we know that you're going to be nervous. So sometimes you have to fake it till you make it. But it's really that first 5 minutes. I might not be, fully engaged in what you're saying. It's how I get that connection with you. If I'm just asking, as these questions are listed, like as Jim said, if you're going on for 20 minutes and being very long-winded, then I've already lost steam in our conversation. So brief, concise, something interesting, something funny that makes me laugh, just that personable connection. I'm just trying to break the ice. Usually any panel interview starts with just general questions, trying to break the ice, knowing that you're, on pins and needles about the interview.
Yeah, and thanks, Vicki. You mentioned panel interviews. I mean, we could spend probably 20 minutes talking about, individual interviews versus panel. The one piece of advice is, in a panel interview, keep everyone engaged. So if Vicki asks me a question, I'm going to answer Vicki, but I want to make sure that Joe, if he's on the interview panel, is also engaged. So, here we've got the slides, but, assuming that you've got the array of 2 or 3 people, answer Vicki, but kind of eye contact, engage Joe, engage another person. 2 or 3 questions in, you may not know whether a person is detail oriented or 30,000 feet. So if Vicki is very detail oriented and I'm just giving her 30,000 foot answers, it's not satisfying her. So you know what? Ask for feedback. Answer the question. Say, Vicki, did I answer that sufficiently, or would you like more detail? Joe, more detail. I mean, just engage people. So this is the part where we've got a couple of volunteers. And so we're gonna just ask a couple of people to tell us about themselves. So hopefully this is all gonna work for us. Joanna Owen, are you with us? If you are, turn your camera on, take yourself off mute. Don't be bashful.
I am.
Wonderful. Hi, Joanna.
Hi, how are you?
We're doing real well. Thanks for being brave. So we're going to give folks just a little bit of an example here on, we're in an interview, we're all friendly, but right at the top, Joanna, tell us about yourself a little bit.
I'm curious, I'm driven, and I'm a problem solver. In my career, professional career in higher education, I successfully led project and degree completion. And in doing so, I contributed to the university financial and reputation growth. I recently embarked on education in business and data analytics. While some aspects of business might seem new to me, problem solving and collaboration is not. And I hope that my out-of-the-box experience and collaborative skills can bring value to your company. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. Vicki, any reaction? And then Joe, we're gonna, you know, instant feedback here.
It's my first time, so.
You did great.
Hey, I am so impressed that you were brave enough to get up amongst 38 people and just speak like that. That takes a lot of guts. So, so there's something you left out at the very beginning that's intriguing me. And I say this very affectionately, is there's a language skill here. So your English skills are phenomenal, because I know, you know, you was probably born somewhere else. So it's okay to share that you're, you know, from another country, you're multilingual. That you cannot emphasize enough. You got to get that out straight away, that you're multilingual, because that's very impressive. Keep in mind, the average American, and I say this, you know, not in school, we had to learn 3 languages. So over here, you know, I wish I'd learned Spanish. I didn't. But that is, you know, a big plus in your, you know, in your resume. Yeah, it came across that you were goal-oriented. You summarized it very quickly. You kept my attention. It was good.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah. Joe, reaction?
Yeah, I think Vicki pretty much said it. You know, with the multilingual, the reason why I think also it's good to say that is because, you know, when you go to interviews, sometimes you go for one interview and then someone's like, oh my, there's this other job that's even better I think you can fit into. So just know that when you go into a job interview, that interviewer might be considering you for another role in a better position that might be a better fit. So making sure that you're highlighting your skill sets and what you bring to the table, if you're multilingual, would be huge. Because if I had a role, right, and it was going to be, you know, dealing with something in a different language, but I didn't know you were multilingual, I wouldn't even consider you for the job. But you say that, I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should do this. Okay, let me see if she likes this, or, you know. So just Vicki pretty much hit everything on the head, but just to reemphasize the importance of you know, opening up that. And you know, when you go into a job interview, you know, just think about, you know, you want to highlight the best of the best about yourself, and you just want to come across confident, because, you know, again, as interviewers, things you look for, like, wow, you know, they got stuff together, you know, energetic, stuff like that. So that's good.
Yeah. And just a couple of things, you know, you said you're a problem solver, you've led projects, you know, it's action oriented. So again, thank you very much. You did a great job, and you know, thanks for volunteering. So our second contestant here on the Tell Us About Yourself show, Tim King. Do we have you out here with us, Tim?
Yes, this is me.
Oh, I love the backdrop. Is that a drone, or what is that?
It's one of the, it's from IVMF, actually. I picked it up just the other day. It's one of the new Syracuse University's Zoom backgrounds.
Love it.
Super cool. Yeah, that's what's up.
Love it. All right, so we're no mysteries here. We're going with the same standard question. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm originally from Mississippi, and so I joined the Marine Corps. And honestly, the reason I joined is because I needed to get out of the small podunk town, leave all of that behind me. And I traveled the world. A lot of the years I was in, I went anywhere and everywhere, and I had a blast being a part of the Marine Corps. But ultimately, it wasn't just so much traveling. It was what I learned from that. Those experiences is mainly just program management, project management, having an ability to be a leader. And so my last few years in the Marine Corps, outside of program management, projects, doing those kinds of things, I was a recruiter. And so I was able to kind of take that on. Being a recruiter, I was able to kind of really learn a new skill. The Marine Corps taught me a lot of great things to be able to sell, be able to communicate really well, to be able to speak, comfortably, and then also to be able to engage properly, but also the good ways of truly connecting with individuals and almost that emotional intelligence and be able to better understand the room and really connect well with others. And so I took those skills, I took that to another level. I left the Marine Corps, really gauged kind of what the market would look like, got a bachelor's degree, and got into Hire Heroes USA. That was my first big opportunity that left. So I have actually been working ever since I left the Marine Corps. I've been resume writing, I've been working and interviewing, and working as kind of a career coach for other fellow veterans and military spouses. So I've been career coaching and doing that for, like I said, for almost 8 years now. Now in my new role, I've actually developed programs and created resources to be able to create the new program that exists with the school that I am currently at. And so developed the entire career services department. And I'm really excited about what I do and where I'm wanting to take that to where it can go. But ultimately, the skill sets that I feel I possess, program management, leadership, as well as coaching, and being able to hopefully take that to another level with the company here.
All right, thank you. Joe, reaction? I'm going to go to you first.
So, definitely a wide range of experience in various areas. So I definitely like that. I like the enthusiasm as you kind of run through the skill set. I thought it was really, really well. You definitely have a lot of experience, whether it's project management, leading, recruiting, sales, building out a development talent kind of program. All that was, I thought that was all really well. It's funny, when you got towards the end, you actually hit things that I thought that would have been the beginning, because you named them out really fast. And that like in the very beginning, when you like, I was in the Marine Corps, got out, I did this, as I've been out the Marine Corps while I was in, I did, program management, sales, recruiting, I feel like to me, that would have been like an eye opener, like in the very beginning, kind of like, wow, this guy has, he's a fast learner, he's moving to different positions, he's always got out, he's career coaching, like something like that, I think would have been, because you said it towards the end versus maybe bringing that in the beginning.
Cool. Okay. I'll definitely make note of that. I like that.
Yeah, agree. Vicki, anything from your perspective?
Yeah, it was good. I agree with Joe. Some of those key items that should have come at the beginning, and maybe a little more shorter. And then just be careful of the audience. And I say that in the world we're living, you mentioned, and I'm being blatantly honest here, Tim, you mentioned Podunk, Mississippi. Some people might, be very proud to live in that part of the town, city, grown up, they don't want to leave. So just be careful that you don't offend, somebody in that interview may be right from that very same place.
I understand that. That makes sense.
Yeah. Good. It was good.
Great thought. Yeah, agree. You had great points. Shorten it up a little bit.
Yeah.
And I didn't even pick up on the podunk. I took it from the perspective of growing and being bigger and better.
Yeah,
and things of that
yeah.
nature.
And it's hats off to anybody that moves out of state and goes to see the world, so
that's kind of why I bring it out, but it was one of those, I don't really say that ever. It just out of this, it was one of those things I quickly said, because you were saying before was kind of try to be, I don't know, catchy or something. And it just, so when I said, okay, this is where I'm from, and then it just quickly was,
roll of the tongue. Yep,
yeah,
absolutely. I would have said it too. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was kind of like you said, a roll of the tongue, but I didn't mean to, but yeah. All right. I'll make sure I try to control that.
All right. Excellent. I know we've got a couple of other volunteers. We want to be really respectful of time. So Elvis, if you go to the next slide, I think we've got maybe 2-3 more slides. We're going to kind of run through these fairly quickly, and then if we have time to do a couple more role plays, we will, or answer questions. But interviewing STAR, we're not, again, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. Hopefully, you've been prepped on this either in a TAP class or in O2O or something, but try to answer questions using the STAR technique. So tell us, what was the situation? What task were you asked to do? The action, the activity, and then the result. And if you get into a habit of just, give me an example of a time where you influenced someone. Give me an example of a time where you used data to make a decision. Give me an example of a time where you were part of a team that was successful. What were you asked to do? What did you do? And what was the result? I very often get the situation and the result, but not how did you get there. I get the situation and how you got there, but like, what did you get to? Or what would you change? Things of that nature. So just you can Google, the top 50 behavioral based questions and bucket them into communication, influencing, data, into 4 or 5, and just have 1 or 2 examples for each of the major categories. And again, practice them would be something that I think we would all suggest. And then Elvis, if you go to the next slide, we're just going to spend a couple of minutes on like career goals and career management. And, so set some goals. What's your objective? Be assertive. The comment here is hunt, don't gather. So really look at what is it that you want to get out of a role? What are you learning? Be accountable. Take control. In the military, you were probably told what to do. You won't be told what to do in the civilian world. Vicky mentioned early up front that we don't wear ranks, and so she interacted with everyone. She wasn't necessarily sure whether it was an E3 or an 06 that she was talking to. She didn't care. And I mean, that's kind of the approach you should take. Don't assume anybody knows what you did or what you can do from your military experience. So always be kind of re-emphasizing. I had an example a number of years ago where one of our employees was the executive officer on a submarine. And, 12 hours of the day, he was running a 135 crew submarine. People in our world did not know that he had that experience. And he was turned down for a job because he didn't have quote unquote supervisory experience. Well, he didn't with us, but I mean, his supervisory experience far overshadowed anything that we would ever have. Someone that was, at the time, he was 25, 26, 27 years old, when he was, the exec officer on the submarine. So, you know what, just, you did it, remind people that you did it. And, from a career management perspective, in the military, you PCSed every few years. It's okay to change jobs. Joe, 7 jobs in, 13 years or so. Some of them were lateral. It's okay to make these kinds of moves. So, Vicky, Joe, anything from a career management perspective? And then I think we have a few minutes. We're going to just see if there's any questions in the chat that we can kind of address.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think you go first, Joe.
Oh, go ahead.
In the chat, there's a question about LinkedIn, and I can't emphasize that enough. But also ongoing having mentors within other companies, because it's really word of mouth sometimes that gets you that connection to a company, to a job, a recommendation. So I can't emphasize that enough, but it's consistency. You've really got to do your homework behind and stay in touch with these people. Jim mentioned, don't assume anybody knows what you did in your job. I have a military background, so when you talk about being an O3 or a whatever, an S1, S2, I know what you did. You've got to dummy it down completely, but don't let that experience not come out. Those keys to success are, you've got job experience, people fresh out of college, you're competing against them, but you have so much more to offer, along with work ethic and just experience. Life experience is huge.
Exactly.
And what I have is kind of just add on what Vicky says. So building that personal board of directors, right? So building those individuals who you can bounce stuff off of is going to be key to when you're looking for a job. Also networking. So I saw the LinkedIn. So like something that I highly recommend is when you go to events, you take people's names down, you add them on LinkedIn. If you had a really good conversation, you follow up and see if you can set a call. Because when you go to these events like you are today, right? It'll be hard to try and get a hold of someone, maybe potentially, get their contact information. But if you get their name, you know, most people when they go to these events have LinkedIn's, and that's a really, really good way to communicate and reach out, and also build your network. And coincidentally, you know, sometimes you'll see people that are friends of that are LinkedIn friends with some other LinkedIn friends, and maybe it's someone that you know personally that you didn't know was connected to maybe like one of us on here, be like, oh wow, this person's connected to Travelers. Maybe I should ask them something because you didn't know that they worked there or had somebody in your network worked there. So making sure also on one thing is making sure your LinkedIn is up to date, right? So as you're reaching out to people, you want to make sure you have that professional picture that you taking. You know, I wouldn't recommend taking like a picture with you know a cell phone. I recommend getting like a professional picture done personally. Making sure that you have your job description similar to your resume and your LinkedIn, because a lot of times people will look at your LinkedIn and that's also kind of their first view into who you are.
Excellent. Elvis, we've got one more slide. If you flip to that one. This is the Travelers military page. So we have a dedicated military page. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about us, just you know, Travelers, careers, military. This is a photo from a Memorial Day service ceremony that we had a couple of years ago in Hartford. The gentleman behind the podium was a 20-year Navy F-18 pilot who joined us about 10 years ago. So you're sitting here again. I go back to that beginning of look at the possibilities and don't discount any company or any potential roles. Would a professional military photo hurt me on LinkedIn? I don't think so. You know, no, I think it reinforces, you know, the service to the country. And if that's what you're proud of, absolutely, that would be fine. Elvis, if you pull the slides down, if you don't mind, we'll go back to full screen. Again, want to be respectful of time. We're right on an hour or so. But we're happy if anybody has any questions. Put them in. Yeah, LinkedIn Premium is free for military and veterans. Absolutely. So I have seen statistics that upwards of 90% of the jobs are not filled through a job posting. So if you're only looking at Indeed and if you're only looking at Monster, you're eliminating 90% of the possibilities out there. Friends, networking, LinkedIn, you know, that's where a lot of positions are really going to be found. It has been our pleasure. If anybody wants to connect with me, you know, just Jay McMahon is my LinkedIn. I just, you know, Travelers military guy. I'll probably come up. There's 3 or 4 of us that usually will. And if there's any questions, we'll be happy to take them. But again, I think we planned for an hour. We were a couple of minutes over. And we don't want to overstay our welcome here. So it's been a pleasure. Vicki, any final parting words of wisdom or advice?
Yeah, so both Joe and I are on LinkedIn too. So if you interview scheduled and you want to practice, you know, reach out to us. We'll be glad to help and post some questions. I know we had some brave souls today, but you know, if you want to just do it one-on-one, I'd be glad to help.
Perfect.
Yeah, definitely.
This is Rick Calendine. I had a question. I raised my hand. I'm not sure if it.
Go Rick. Yep.
I came from a 35-year IT career at a large company, and I was in the military for 7 years in the active Army, and then I stayed in the reserves for 15 years, total service. And I have a broad range of technology that I've worked with over the years. Now, I really having a hard time zero in on the technology stories that I've done. Like there's a lot of projects that I've done, and I know a lot of this was geared towards veterans that are transitioning from the military, but someone like myself who had years of experience in, you know, from COBOL all the way through, you know, today's technologies. Yep. And after 35 years at my company, I took a layoff in August, and now I'm sort of looking at what I'm going to do as far as for that continuing career, like you talked about. I'm not going golfing, yeah, and so forth. So how how can you, you know, there's a lot of positions that require your resume to kind of be tweaked so it focuses on the job descriptions or the tasks that they're looking for you to do. So like that STAR tool that you use, I've used that quite a bit in my previous career. And I have lots of stories. So to be able to translate that, my resume doesn't come close to expanding or explaining my broad skill set. And so what I'm trying to do, I know this is holding everybody up, but I'm trying to spend time at getting that and you know, show the skill set that I have and the learning ability that I did over my career and how I've transitioned and competed against people who had doctorate, master's, and degrees, where I never did. I just did certifications and I learned skills. And I came from the military as a diesel mechanic, and I spent 10 months in a certification program. And I got hired at a big company in '85, and I just learned new technology as it emerged through the years. And but what I'm trying to say is, you know, you were bringing up the points of being able to explain that stuff, and you're who are you, where you're from, and not to come to the point where you're watching your clock,
Yeah.
and be able to get it in there. You know, that 5-minute or that 5-minute elevator speech that you have in your pocket. You know, that sort of thing. So so anyway, but what brought me here is I applied for the Onward to Opportunity, and I'm getting my CIPSSP certification, which I've done that role at Boeing, or at the company I was at, for 35, you know, over the years. And so I just didn't have that certification.
So a couple of quick points, and there may be others, absolutely, in the same perspective. So don't rely on one resume. You're going to have to adapt. So look at the job description, pull some salient things into, maybe in a summary, and you're a quick learner, adaptable, familiar with different types of technology. And then in that tell me about yourself question, don't try to tell me everything about it.
I know.
It's like, because you're going to have an hour. You're going to have the ability to interact. So
I've been in those panel interviews, and I've succeeded in a lot of them, and I've also not done well in some. Because not in a way, because I didn't necessarily fit for the job. And at my point in my career, I'm looking to be effective as I hit the ground, and also you know, enjoy what I'm doing and the people that I'm joining, because I don't want to go to an organization where you know, I don't fit.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there was some suggestions in the chat. If you're O2O through some of the certifications, and yeah, Elvis or Laura can probably.
Yeah, I was just going to actually mention that, you know, it sounds like some of the employment resources provided through the program Onward to Opportunity would be helpful too. We work with Hire Heroes USA, so that's something you can look forward to as a program participant.
Exactly. So Zachary just asked if they can ask a question. Here's our point on this one. I'm not going anywhere, so we'll be happy to stay and answer some questions. We do want to be respectful. If people have to drop off, you're not going to offend us by dropping off. So Zachary, if you've got a question, shoot, we'll kick it around with you.
Just to follow up, before I sent my resume in as an example, and I thought we were going to go.
Yeah, and Richard, I read your resume, and I'd be glad afterwards to just cover some things separately if you'd like.
Thank you.
I did there. I've got some pointers.
And I don't live far from Nashville, so we can
Yeah.
we can go to the goats.
Okay.
And Richard, just to add on what you said, you know, because I know you said it in, and you said your resume in. So, you know, a couple things to think about from a technology perspective, you know, going back to what Jim was saying, right? So if you're thinking about, you know, how you're going to sell yourself, and essentially that's what you do when you're going, you know, essentially you would want to hit, you know, again, your background in the military, you want to hit, you know, different technologies that you use, you're a fast learner, you've worked in different areas, and you want to talk about the successes that you've had, and talking about in a very concise way. Having potentially maybe 3 up front is max, I would say. I wouldn't go beyond that. I would just have real quick, even it could be 3 or less, just a quick examples of how you've done what you've been successful at in different technology careers. Also, you can also mention that you're working on your CISSP, and you'd be able to knock that out in like the first 30 seconds or maybe even 45 max on talking with somebody. So just think about that as you're talking about like how you're selling yourself to somebody, what you did in the military, fast, technologies you've worked in, successes, and you'd be done. So that's what I would recommend when you do that. And I'm talking to Vicky, and definitely more than happy to help out there. Give you a couple more pointers on how you could sell yourself or talk about your what you bring to the table.
That was an area that I didn't really focus on. I kind of focused on my skill set, and it was very, very, because that's the stuff that I'm eager to get put out there, because those are the things that show that intelligence and be able to adapt and get things done and adjust and learn as everybody does things a little differently. One other thing, the security clearances. I'm sorry. Security clearances is a big thing in our area here. And I don't have a security clearance, but I had one when I was in the Army a long time ago. But is there a way to get a security clearance or that sort of thing before you get hired into a company?
Yeah. So what I would say is when you're looking for a job in a particular organization, see if you even need a security clearance, right? So a lot of agencies that necessarily aren't government focused actually don't require you to get a security clearance. So I think you're focusing on the right things, which is getting your CISSP. I think that'll be big. I think working on the resume and also how you would actually talk about your skills. Those would actually be really key. Security clearance, again, that would only be if you're going to an organization that requires you to have a secret clearance or it requires you to have a top secret. So if you don't have that, maybe you don't want to look at organizations that require security clearance. So just listening to what you're saying, those are the kind of things that I think about that come to my mind when I was hearing you say that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
In this area, Huntsville, Redstone Arsenal, it's a lot of military contracts, and and so there's a lot of the jobs that I look for are have some skill.
And also thinking back to, and this is for everybody, thinking back to what Jim said, some organizations have work from home, meaning work remotely. So I wouldn't limit myself to applying to jobs only in my particular area. You can also look at a company, because a lot of times you look at job postings, they say remote, meaning you can work remotely from where you're at in a company that's in a different state. So when you look at those job recs, pay attention to that, because again, things are changing, and you might be able to look at a job that says remote. So you might not have to work at a company in your state.
Yeah, exactly. I was working remote because of the COVID, and then earlier in the career, they worked us from home for 10 years, actually. So I'm familiar with that. Thank you. I'm sorry for.
Oh, you're welcome. No. I definitely. That's definitely what we're here for, to help out. So you definitely have to apologize for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Zachary, I think you had a question.
Zach had a question.
Hi, everyone. So I have noticed in the past 3 interviews I've performed during COVID at home that there has been very little introduction, and the interview has progressed straight to being shotgun with extremely complex technical questions. And in some cases, I've left the interview feeling very embarrassed because we don't know everything in IT, and I maybe ask a question I don't know. I'm trying to best brace myself for that type of scenario and what to do when you are presented with something you have not had experience with, and how to best answer that.
So from a technology perspective, I would go back to paying attention to the job description. So a lot of times, and this is not just technology, by the way, this could be other ones. They'll actually say, do you have experience? Do you have a PMP? Are you familiar with this type of coding language? Do you have this certification? So typically, if you pay really close attention to, you know, the job description and what you need, as long as you're prepared to talk to that. And if you don't have experience in one of the things, you could give an experience of how you're a fast learner. So let's say you were trying to learn a coding language like Java, Python, or let's say you did something in cybersecurity where you're doing some kind of assessment. You would talk to that and how you were able to pivot fast and learn and adapt. So talk to them about how you're fast learner. Tell people that, you know, on my spare time, you know, I study X and this is what I do, you know, my spare time. So just being able to talk to your fast learner in the skill set, if they throw you off, will also be something good, because I've interviewed individuals that may not have necessarily been the strongest in every area, but because they've demonstrated how fast they learn, you know, I'm like, you know what, this is a really good person. Because when you get to jobs, to be totally honest with you, they're going to train you. They're going to send you to training. Right? You're not, you know, a lot of jobs necessarily won't just have you come in, hit the ground running. You'll get in and they'll say, all right, you know, we're going to have some onboarding. Here's some different trainings that you can do to get prepared for that job. So, you know, that'd be my recommendation again, is paying really close attention to what skills and tech they're looking for, and making sure that if you don't know one of those skills, you're able to talk to how you were able to learn fast, like even you know, a different technology. And again, all questions at the very end that they were talking about. So, you know, do you have any questions for me? You can be honest at the end of the video, like, hey, you know, I realized, you know, you were talking about a couple of technologies, and then that's also another opportunity for you to talk about how fast you learn in your skill sets.
Yeah, I mean, you never know what you're going to face in an interview, and this is a different scenario for all of us. But to echo Joe's points, tell us what you can do, and you're a quick learner, and here's what I've demonstrated. Because, you know, we get people that want 7, 8, 9 requirements. Gotta have. Nobody has 9 out of 9. You know, I mean, Joe said it. You get 3 or 4, and then, you know what, we're gonna round out everything else. So, I mean, just demonstrate that you're flexible, adaptable, quick learner, and you know what, there are some companies that you probably don't want to work for. You're evaluating the company every bit as much as the company is evaluating you. And if you just don't feel comfortable, if they came like right off the bat, straight in, you know, for the throat, hey, okay, you're not the culture I want to work for. So, I mean, you know, maybe approach it that way.
I, in a situation like that, have answered the question on how I would go about learning how to do it, that I didn't understand it, and then show the method that I use, so that it's not like all the information, you know, but how you get your job done and how you attack those situations.
Totally agree. I'll give you an example that goes back about 13, 14 years. We had a retiring lieutenant colonel out of the Army interview. It was an exploratory interview, and he ran into one of our VPs who just went right at it from the beginning. It's like, why should I interview you? Like, why am I talking to you? And I'm going to paraphrase. He said, you know, I've spent 23 years in the military solving problems. I'm a solution looking for a problem to solve. I may not know your industry, but share a couple problems with me, and I'll at least tell you how I would approach them. He got hired. And he got hired because the VP came back and said, I never had anybody in an interview say they're a problem solver. You know, so he didn't focus on what he didn't know and what he couldn't do. He focused on what he could do. So again, you know, there's no definitive book on interviewing. You got to be adaptable. You got to kind of roll with the punches. So, other questions, comments? We still have 28 folks here. I'm thrilled. Nobody's leaving us. So we're not going anywhere. Vic?
I have a comment, and you know, I would go to a lot of job fairs, and people would pass me their resumes, and I would ask them, you know, and they were always interested in the salary, and that's a sore subject these days. You know, in the old days, you would see it in the newspaper listed with the salary range. Now you have to go on Glassdoor, or you have to do a little bit of research just the range. Don't get too hung up on the salary. Say you came from a $50,000 or $100,000 job. and you have a requirement. I want, I deserve, 100,000. The goal is to get your foot in the door with that company. If we really want you, we're going to see that you've had all this experience. We're going to pay you for, in our company, we're a pay for performance, but we see your education, we see your track record. We're going to see what your prior salary is when we do the background check and everything. The goal is to get into the company, and the rest, I'm an example of that. I started at the bottom, and I was working part-time when I started, and then I went to full-time and I worked my way up. Some jobs were lateral. I took a 2-year stint in Hawaii with our Hawaii office. It was lateral, but I was able to move with my husband and keep my job, and with a good company with the benefits. That's huge. We have 401k. We still have a pension plan. Many companies, you need to do that research, and the whole package total might be good in the long run for you and your family. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, I mean, salaries, and we could spend a lot of time on this one, without a doubt, Vicki. There are some states that now require employers to list a salary range. And, it's like the range listed is the bottom to the top. So just assume something in the middle. There are a number of states that will not allow an employer to ask your current salary or your previous salary. It's got to be market competitive on whatever the job is. So it's a really dynamic world out there. To Vicki's point, don't get hung up on it. If you're asked, I wouldn't commit to a particular dollar figure. I would talk about a range, something that you're very comfortable in, and something along the lines of, well, I'm considering other opportunities between 60 and 80,000, or 80 and 100,000, or 100 and 125,000. Keep it broad enough that falls within a range that you're comfortable. And again, you're evaluating the company every bit as much as the company's evaluating you. If you get somebody on the other end who gets shocked at whatever number you're putting out, as long as it's reasonable, it's data for you to understand that maybe this isn't the right opportunity for you. So, Elvis, how are we on time? Again, we're not going anywhere, but if anybody has any questions, if you want to put them in the chat. If not, we can look at potentially wrapping up. Or not.
I'd be glad to look at anybody's resume. If you want to send it, I'm vcegley@travelers.com. Just don't forget that middle initial, Vicki C. Egley@travelers.com. Or if you want to go on LinkedIn, you can connect with me. I did see a couple where the education was at the top. The norm is education at the bottom. And I've got to tell you, as detailed as your resume might be, we're skimming through the resumes because we're getting so many. You're one of hundreds, so we're skimming. So bullet points, highlights. The goal again is to get that call and get a phone screen, or get in for an interview or a virtual interview. I'm not reading it word for word. You just don't have the time. There's so many resumes coming in.
Yeah, good point. And again, that's the networking aspect. How do you bust through the ground clutter? You find Joe or you find Vicki, and then they're your intermediary. They send it to me, and I know the recruiter. At least in our world, I know the recruiter that's handling the job. And I send it and I say, hey, do me a favor, just take a look at the resume. And that'll get you to the top of the pile. So again, it goes back to network.
Thank you all. Go ahead, Joe.
I was gonna say for me too, it's JSTANFOR at Travelers, and also LinkedIn. I go back to, again, is a very easy way to reach out. More than happy to help out outside of this call.
Thank you all from Travelers team. We'll definitely share your contact information in our follow-up survey that we send out to all of our participants and registered individuals. So definitely look forward to our follow-up email with the survey. So please let us know, how did this webinar go? What have you liked? What other future webinars, future topics would you like to see that we bring to you? And we'll definitely try to make that happen. And thank you again, team. Thank you all for participating, volunteers. Thank you so much for sending your resumes and answering the tell me about yourself questions. And we'll all see you next time.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Everybody have a great day. Thanks, Laura.